Namaskar, learners and listeners. I am Bharati Sarkar and I am going to talk to you about the human impact on environment. You now have a good idea of what actually is environment, and today we shall talk about how, as population of humans increased, the environment got degraded. And today the environmentalists are really scared as to what lies in future, because the extent of damage to the environment has caused a total change in climate, which we can all see with our own eyes and also feel it. Therefore, we have to be careful, we have to see how we can undo it for our own survival. You have all heard the name of Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, who was the father of our nation. You know, he was a very great environmentalist, and many years ago, when the damage to the environment could not even be felt, he said, "There is enough in nature for man's need, but not enough for man's greed." What did he mean? He meant that don't exploit the environment so much that it rebounds on you and makes life difficult for you. Now, we all have to remember this even today and see that we all help in our all small way to help conserve the environment for the benefit of the future generations. Now, let us see what caused the degradation of the environment. How did this human impact get to show? See, humans evolved way back sometime little before 1 million years ago, between 1 and 2 million years ago. Then slowly the hunters and the gatherers, they began to settle down some 10,000 years ago, and they got to know about mining, about the metals and the minerals, and started exploiting the environment to get them for their own use. But then the population was small and so much was not needed. Today you all know that we are more than 1.2 billion, and the world has a population of more than 7 billion. And so many people need houses to live, they need food to eat, they need other things for their comfort, and therefore constantly the environment is being tapped, the natural environment is being exploited, and things are being taken out, and that's why so many disasters are happening today. So what are we going to study under this? First, the impact of the growing population, its needs. Number two, how is this population impacting through deforestation, cutting off of forests? How is this huge population adding so much waste to the environment? How is the human population polluting the environment? And overall certain global issues which really need to be solved soon. Now, let us see what has happened. See, we have cut the forests. So, what has happened? The carbon sink is gone. There are no roots to hold the soil, therefore, there is soil erosion. There is a concrete jungle now in place of the forests and the plants. We have polluted all our water bodies. We throw non-biodegradable polythene bags onto the environment, and they are collecting all over and making mounds. Now, what do we do about this? And what is this doing to the environment? The environment, you already know, has become warm. There is global warming. The climate has changed, and we can see that ourselves. Now, once the climate changes, what happens? Large number of natural disasters take place. You would say that were there no natural disasters earlier? Yes, there were. There were natural disasters, but today there are large number of disasters which are really human made, which are because humans have exploited the resources and humans have degraded the environment by adding pollutants to it. Now think of floods. These days we are hearing of floods all over our country, in many states of our country, and people have lost their lives, people have lost their belongings, life has come to a standstill. Now what are floods? Floods are always the flowing of water. Now how does this overflowing take place? It takes place whenever there is a cloud burst. It also takes place when there are excessive rains, as it happened a few years ago in Kashmir. There were excessive rains and that caused floods, and people had to build all their houses all over again in those areas. So what should be done? Whenever we talk of disasters, we should see what is this disaster happening due to? In other words, what is the cause of the disaster? Number 2, what is it doing to us? And number 3, how can we prevent it and manage it? So prevention and management is a very important aspect of any disaster management, and in fact, even in our country we have a whole Ministry of Disaster Management. So for saving our lives from the impact of floods, there should not be any construction over the river beds. And you see all the time rivers bring silt, so that has to be desilted. The channels and reservoirs, the silt has to be removed. The surplus runoff water has also to be removed when water flows from one river to another. Then today architecture has progressed a lot, so there are construction of flood proof buildings, and there are also construction of roads which are all above the flood levels. So having talked about the floods, let us now talk about cyclones, which is another disaster. Cyclones are winds which are blowing at a very high speed, and therefore what do? They blow off the roofs of houses, they blow off little children, they blow off things which are light enough to be blown off. And what should we do about it? We should, as preventive measure, advance food, storage, what we should do is we should store some extra water and extra food whenever there is a prediction of a cyclone. We should also have flashlights so that if the electricity goes off, we can move to a safer place. The evacuation point should be told to all the people that in case of a cyclone, please move out to that place, and never panic and run outdoors. Also, you see, the government has to see that there is arrangement from any kind of sickness or those who require some medical facilities. Having talked about cyclones and floods, let us go to the third natural disaster, which is the earthquakes. Earthquakes, all happen due to certain internal movements of the earth deep within the earth. And when these movements happen, what happens. In those, volcanic mountains, there even can be lava, and the earth shakes. What will happen to the buildings? Naturally, they will collapse and lots of lives will be lost. So how should we prevent and manage that? We should know if it is predicted, especially you see in Indonesia, there are so many volcanic mountains and there are so many earthquakes that happen all the time. Now, volcanoes and earthquakes, for them, there have to be now built modern buildings which are earthquake proof, and architecture really has provision for that. Then there should be an evacuation plan. If people are caught in an earthquake, or if they are caught in the rubble of the earthquake. Under it, you must have heard about the Nepal earthquake which happened some time ago. How many lives were lost? All buildings collapsed. So, there has to be arrangement for removing rubble and taking out bodies. Also, you see, at home one should always stay away from glass windows or walls or electric poles, and it always makes sense to go under the bed and hide there. Now, after earthquake, I would like to talk about tsunami. Tsunami is the earthquake which takes place below water, below the sea. And you must have heard that way back in 2004, people didn't even know what tsunami was. And there was so much water, high waves in the sea, and they covered all the place with water. Now, that was so scary. I happened to be there in Chennai then, and I really saw people wailing because so many people who had gone to the sea beach were washed off. So, tsunami also causes havoc, and what should be done for it? People should always remember that if there is prediction that tsunami is going to be there, they should be careful, they should be evacuated from the coastal areas, they should be indoors and see that many lives are not lost. Then there are landslides. I have already told you about cloudburst, which causes enormous flooding of the place. Now, even landslides are when large chunks of lands. I told you that because of deforestation now, roots of trees are not there to hold back the land in position, and therefore big chunks of land may fall and take lives. So, best thing is to plant trees, what is known as afforestation and social forestry. If we have plants all around us, there will be no landslides, there will be no soil erosion. Then forest fires. I have already told you that forests not only form the carbon sink, they also are homes to many wild animals. So, deforestation has also killed a lot of our biodiversity. Now, what is a forest fire? There are natural forest fires, sometimes due to rubbing of dry leaves, and once that trees are all wood, and therefore that fire really spreads. Now, human made forest fires are when, due to irresponsible people walking in the forest, throw a burning matchstick. The burning matchstick will cause a big fire, and sometimes with lightning also forest fire may be caused. This human negligence really should not be there at all, so that there is no human made disaster of forest fire. Dry litter, dry leaves, dry twigs should be all removed. A fire brigade should immediately be summoned. The farm animals and other animals should be moved to a good and safe place. Belongings should be moved, and really no cigarette butts or lit cigarette ends should be left in forest ever, to save the forest from such a big disaster. Now, I have told you about these many disasters which may happen due to human negligence. We also know that deforestation is also a human made disaster. We have cut forests to such an extent to build our own houses, to have fields there to grow food, that now there is not only no carbon sink, but there is also no habitat for our wild animals. And also I just told you that landslides and all are caused due to this. Deforestation, I have already told you, can be reversed through social forestry and afforestation. Next, another human made disaster is air, water and land pollution. You all know that air pollution, in fact, you have a whole chapter on air and water pollution, and you will learn how there are so many particles, and you also know that there can be fog with smoke, which we call smog. In Delhi last December, there was such a severe smog, it became difficult to even breathe. So, air pollution not only puts lives into risk of plants, but also of other animals and human beings. And you all know that humans now have been using vehicles which also pollute the air. Now, we have to all be careful that in our own way we see that a stop is put to it. Now, apart from that, you see, we have been using so many fossil fuels, coal, wood. You know what fossil fuels are? They are actually fuels, the coal and the coke and petrol and kerosene. They are all, and natural gases, CNG, LPG, they are all naturally occurring fossil fuels which actually have been formed from fossils of animals and plants which lived millions and millions of years ago. Now, when I say millions and millions of years ago, I simply mean that it takes very long to form fossil fuels, and now our growing population and our large population has almost used up. Now, fossil fuels, there is another problem. When you burn fossil fuels, the whole atmosphere gets carbon dioxide. When there is carbon dioxide, too much of it, then it forms a layer, and when there is sun's radiations which strike the earth and they have to go back into space, they can't go back, and below the carbon dioxide layer there is a higher temperature than otherwise. This is called the greenhouse effect, because in the greenhouse where in winter plants are kept, this is how a layer of carbon dioxide keeps the greenhouse warm. And that is why you see the gases like carbon dioxide, like methane, and like the CFC, chlorofluorocarbons, and sulfur dioxide, they are all called greenhouse gases. Especially carbon dioxide is responsible for global warming, and once the temperature of the earth is changed, then lots of climatic changes also take place. Now, other than depletion of fossil fuels and burning of fossil fuels that causes global warming and climate change, let us talk about depletion of the ozone layer. Now, depletion of the ozone layer. What is the ozone layer? See, when the sun's rays come to the earth, they strike the earth and then go back to the earth, and after heating the earth, there are also ultraviolet radiations. Now, these ultraviolet radiations of the solar radiations are kept back into space and prevented from reaching the earth by a layer which is called the ozone layer, because it is made of the gas ozone, and the oxygen present in the atmosphere itself makes ozone. Now, what has happened due to the use of chlorofluorocarbons, which are used in aerosols and in refrigeration, there have been too much of these aerosols and CFCs rather, and they have caused a small hole in the ozone layer. Now, what will be the repercussion? Through the hole, UV rays can come and cause skin cancer to humans. Therefore, you see, humans have impacted in the environment in a very negative way. So, what can you do? Only thing you can do is remove the use of aerosols, reduce the use of chlorofluorocarbons, use substitutes, etc. And people are doing that, because the ecologists or the environmentalists have now warned everyone that we have to be careful. You must have heard about the different protocols, the Kyoto Protocol, you must have heard, which was an outcome of the conference held in Japan, of the environmentalists. You must have also heard about the Paris summit, in which many environmentalists got together because they were worried about global warming and climate change. So, changes are coming and we really have to be very careful, but I will say it again that we have to do our bit as citizens of the world and see to it that the environment is not impacted due to our negligence and due to our over exploitation and due to our polluting the environment. Now, also you see, in a way, the unhygienic conditions that prevail in the slums today is another kind of impact. You know, now there is urbanization, people are coming for jobs, but there is no place to stay, and slums and unhygienic conditions prevail sometimes. Lot is also being done not only by our government, but also in our own way because of awareness that we are trying to stay clean and healthy, but lot still remains to be desired. So, you please try and do whatever you can do in your own way and also spread awareness because you have learnt about it. So, all this I just told you how due to the increase of population this has happened. We have to be careful ourselves. We have to see that we do not allow deforestation, but we grow more trees, plant more trees. We have Van Mahotsavs. We have to see that we do not pollute the air. We do not throw garbage in water, that we do not also use chemicals such that our water bodies are ruined. You must have heard the term eutrophication. What is eutrophication? Let me tell you. See, what happens is our green revolution really brought about a very big advance in growing good food, more production of food, etc. But we also use some fertilizers. You must have heard NPK, or at least seen sacks with NPK written. N for nitrogen, P for phosphorus, K for potassium, which help to grow plants. But what happened was, you see, with the field runoff with water, these would move into the water bodies. Now, N, P, K are fertilizers, they are minerals also used by animals, and therefore, large number of algae grow on those water bodies. Those algae remove all the oxygen from the water as they breathe and grow in numbers, and then as they die, they also pollute it, and all the larger fish and the larger aquatic animals are lost. Similarly, you see the pesticides, they go into different places, and when they go through the food chain, there is a phenomenon called biomagnification, in which you see as you go up the trophic level in the food chain, the level of eutrophication. Let me tell you. See, what happens is our green revolution really brought about a very big advance in growing good food, more production of food, etc. But we also use some fertilizers. You must have heard NPK, or at least seen sacks with NPK written. N for nitrogen, P for phosphorus, K for potassium, which help to grow plants. But what happened was, you see, with the field runoff with water, these would move into the water bodies. Now, N, P, K are fertilizers, they are minerals also used by animals, and therefore, large number of algae grow on those water bodies. Those algae remove all the oxygen from the water as they breathe and grow in numbers, and then as they die, they also pollute it, and all the larger fish and the larger aquatic animals are lost. Similarly, you see the pesticides, they go into different places, and when they go through the food chain, there is a phenomenon called biomagnification, in which you see as you go up the trophic level in the food chain, the level of accumulation of pesticides increases, and there was a beautiful book called The Silent Spring, written by Rachel Carson, which said that all the eagles which form the emblem of the US were dying because their eggs were so fragile due to the pesticides accumulated in the body. Lastly, I want to tell you that waste management again is very important. There are two kinds of waste, the biodegradable, which are degraded by the bacteria, and the non-biodegradable. Please see that you don't increase the waste on earth, and use the slogan of the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, recycle. You can also add to them 2 more R's: repair and recover whatever is beneficial and of use from the waste. I have already told you about all the global problems, and I am certain that after seeing this PowerPoint presentation, you will become so aware and you will do your bit to conserve nature. Thank you, learners and listeners.
प्रकाशित करने, राहों को आलोकित करने, हम अपना दीपक स्वयं बने, हम अपना रास्ता स्वयं चुने। हम अपना दीपक स्वयं बने, हम अपना रास्ता स्वयं चुने। जीवन ये प्रकाशित करने, राहों को आलोकित करने।
धन साधन समय की सीमा से विद्यालय जो मुक्त हो, धन साधन समय की सीमा से विद्यालय जो मुक्त हो।
कभी पढ़े हम कहीं पढ़े, वे विषय की लोच से युक्त हो।
कभी पढ़े हम कहीं पढ़े, वे विषय की लोच से युक्त हो।
मित्रों हम उठे और जागे,
मंजिल आने की ध्वनि सुने। हम अपना दीपक स्वयं बने, हम अपना रास्ता स्वयं चुने।
जीवन ये प्रकाशित करने, राहों को आलोकित करने।
राष्ट्रीय मुक्त विद्यालय का है द्वार खुला सबकी खातिर। शिक्षा परीक्षा का अवसर एक बार ही क्यों मिलता फिर।
शिक्षा और परीक्षा का अवसर एक बार ही क्यों मिलता